Okay,
So,
so yeah,
yeah.
so we were just talking about what's happening with people who haven't been having an internal kind of experience or relationship with the self, but just totally dependent on the world view as it's given to them. So go ahead. I wanted to capture this.
Yeah, I was just saying that if you have lived your life as an organism and everything that is exterior to you is just merely part of the flow and there's no internal monologue whatsoever, when external event that has a direct opposition to you occurs, you're not going to know the relation between you and it. You're not going to know that there's a danger. You're not going to know what's true,
Right.
real, or actual, because there is no abstraction at the pinnacle of your thoughts. There is no thought whatsoever. It's just this pure movie, and the credits are about to roll, and you're ready to watch them as they scroll down the screen, because there is no direct communication between perception and reality. All it is just this conveyor belt of experience in each temporal block, continuing in continuing smoothly, and you don't know the difference if you don't have this time to reflect within the internal manifestations that are just as natural as focusing on the fact that you're looking at something that's not in you.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. Yeah.
Did I remember everything?
Yeah. No, it was great. I just wanted to make sure I captured that because what I was just saying a few moments before we went into that was that I'm talking now to people that we, they have a name. It's called experiencers, people who have had these transformational experiences and kind of felt forced to go within and to ask these questions like, well, why am I so different? Why does the world out there work so well for people and it never worked for me? And never being able to reconcile that and always feeling like the odd one out. And now it feels like, we're definitely in a value shift. We're shifting values now to where this inner, this inner experience of self has value now because we're tethered more to like being more like a cosmic being or a universal being, having tethered to that instead of tethering to the outer world, to the movie screen. I use that analogy a lot too. Um, Waiting for something to happen or waiting to be told what to do or what to think. And so it forces you to go on a collective level now. We're being forced to go within for our answers. There are no answers out there. We can try and look and search, and somebody's got to be able to tell us what to do and what to think. Um, but that isn't going to come until we find that um, internal authority within, and then the outer world will start to reflect that. Right.
Yeah, and the scary thing about, like, let's say you want to find people, not to learn from, but you just want to find people that are going to tell you what the truth or the facts or the internal manifestation is. What you're literally doing psychologically when you're enacting that out is you have been you have awakened from the fact that this is a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and now you realize that it's not. So you're trying to find someone to tell you the truth of yourself, not because you're trying to now exist in the fact that there isn't a movie, But if someone says something that just sounds like it fits, now you can go back to the movie again. Now everything can smooth out. It's just like, oh yes, that fits. Whoop, and it just goes right back into a movie without the audience. Because if it fits, you don't have to think. If
That's
everything
right.
is just in flow, it just whoop.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks the opposite. Everyone thinks, oh, now that they're awake, they're just petrified at the fact that they're awake. And so they're just trying to find someone to help them learn how to be more awake. No, they're trying to find someone intelligent enough that seemed to fit the story that
Yeah.
they lost.
Yeah. So right. Yes. And that is the ego, right? I mean, the egoic
Yes.
mind has to have the searching. I need something quick to put into my consciousness so that I don't have to think, right? So that
Yeah.
I don't have to go within and feel anything, or so that I can calm my agitated mind down, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, so what would you say is, what can people do to feel safe with that process of going within?
I think the major difficulty there, and you notice it in philosophy as well, um, is that some people genuinely don't know what the heck you're talking about when you say something like an internal life.
Yeah.
They and I would challenge people who do have a deep internal life to try to take that away. Imagine if you woke up and you didn't have any of these really mystical, spontaneous psychic states where you were talking to yourself and then a random vivid image appeared, or you thought about what happened 2 weeks ago. None of these beautiful gymnastics occur. Just imagine someone took an eraser and now all you have access to is this sort of, you don't even have the feeling that you're behind your eyes. You just feel that you are, and that's it. And there's no red string going backward into the skull. It's just a pure organism. And now you will understand their perspective. You'll understand that, okay, the problem is, how does someone who doesn't already have that red string innately retreat into themselves in a healthy way in order to understand what can be manifested?
Yes.
Um,
That's a
and
really interesting perspective to go to, what would it be like for people who do have that internal connection to not have it anymore? It's great, because we can, it's like, whoa, shit, I don't think I could handle that,
yeah,
because I've always had that.
because like if you watch, just to bring up like my favorite characters, if you watch Watchmen, which is a superhero comic book movie, and the main character Ozymandias, um, he is supposedly the smartest man in the universe, and he has the highest form of moral excellence, and he has the highest form of rational mathematical thought, and he doesn't agree with anybody because he knows logically, in the movie he knew logically that, sacrificing, in this case, 10 million people for 7 billion people was just necessary because he had access to knowledge that no one else had access to. But when someone watches a person like that in a movie, they just think to themselves, well, there's not really any difference between me and that person. It's just a difference of thinking. And then they do the same thing with someone like, let's say, Sherlock, who has amazing deductive skills,
Hmm.
and he has like borderline psychosis. He can see math in front of him, and everyone likes to think, oh, they're just making it cool. Even people that are like that don't actually see math and don't actually act weirdly autistic in that manner. But that's actually the opposite of what's going on. It's actually that those are the only kinds of people that exist. People that are radically different in the brain and in the mind and in the spirit. And the trick is, how do we get out of that fictional narrative of, oh, that's just another depiction of a normal person, but we're all normal and we just diverge from normalcy. No, there is no normal.
No.
We have all diverged way before we were even conscious, and now we're just trying to deal with that divergence as if we already knew it from birth when we didn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's how hard I think it is to understand others. And I've met a lot of people who I would call pure organisms, and the way I've tried to speak to them is I try to probe into something that they already like
Mm.
and get them to exercise their imagination visually. Because once you can exercise your visual imagination and things pop up in your head, it's not going to sound crazy when I say something like, oh, um, everything has a resolution to its experience, or there is something ingrained in the essence of all thought. Like, immediately, your mind now has some place to go. There's actually a place
Yeah.
to land or a place to build in the fabric of the mind now that it's open. But
Yeah.
when you just say that to someone, they usually take it as a linguistic game. They just think, all right, cool. I don't know what that means. They don't see what it's referring to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's very clever. Yeah. The mind needs something to start. I notice that, I hear a lot of people in, when they talk about these things, and I've mentioned this before, whether it was in our talk or another talk, excuse me, where we go through all of these intellectual machinations, and then we get to this point of, well, I guess at that point, then we just have to go within. And then a lot of people, as you were pointing out, don't really understand what going within is. And that's not, I want to make sure that I say that this isn't a judgment in any way,
Yeah.
of these people, this group of people who practice the, internal life, are better than those who don't. It's simply coming to that point of, oh, there's an internal life. There's so much more to my consciousness, and I'm willing to explore that. So it's what I share with people about going within is, um, get a sense of something, greater than yourself. You don't have to have religion. You can just think of the cosmos, this all of creation, this magnificence that surrounds all of us every single day in the natural world, or looking up at the stars. There's a magnificence there. It's like, just begin to dialogue with that greater sense of self and say, all right, everything is falling apart here in this reality. So I'm willing to hear and see and perceive something more from within myself. And it's not in the mind, it's a body. It's an embodied experience of more. And then when we start talking about, yes, once you start doing that and you just welcome that and you open to it, even though it's the unknown, right? That's where the rest of our consciousness is. It is in that unknown. And
Right.
because it's
Yeah.
not defined by the movie, then we freak out and say, well, it doesn't exist. It's a, or if you have programming, religious programming and all, it's like, well, that's the demons. That's where they hang out. Well, I assure you, there are no demons here. The only demons we have are the misunderstandings we have within ourselves, our traumas, everything that's been inconsistent in this life, things that don't make sense, that the movie was never able to fully inform us of. We have to go within and find that and inquire. It's a deep inquiry into an investigation into more of our consciousness. And if we move in that direction on a regular basis, just, even if you just, people talk about meditation, that's all good and fine. But what about just sitting and going and just saying, well, here I am, here in the present moment, and I don't know anything anymore. I thought I knew, but I don't. And so I'm willing to enter a state of innocence, to say, I don't know. So if there's something more, please show me. Let me see this. Let me experience it. And if you stay consistently with that, and in religious terms, it's been called unceasing prayer. And prayer doesn't have to be under the category of religion. It's just a dialogue with something greater than ourselves. And to just keep inquiring, just keep saying, I want to live, I want to thrive, I want to be a part of recreating, humanity in harmonic relationship with the earth and with each other, with the universe. So show me how that's done, because I'm open now, because I don't know. And that is what I say. That's when you show up on the radar of the cosmos. It's like, oh, someone's coming online, yay! And so then you
I love
start to
that.
have synchronicities. You start to have, people come into your life and they say something that's like, oh my God, I just thought that, or I just read that, and so then you start reweaving yourself back into a cosmic sense of self, rather than a movie self, a participant,
Yeah.
in the movie. So it's
Hold on.
something
Oh,
that we, okay.
sorry. Hold on. What?
What?
What? It's not in this room. It's in the kitchen. Go find it.
We're talking about the cosmos, man.
Dadgummit. Like, how dare you interrupt a existential conversation on like the 16th dimensional mode of reality, bruh? Like, you'd be doing that.
Because you're looking for what?
It's like, I don't even understand what an object is right now, bro. We're past that. Oh, man. But yeah, you put it beautifully though. I really hope people learn how to do that. To accept that form of innocence is to accept the majesty of the cosmos, but also to accept the majesty of yourself.
Yes.
And it's like we live in and unfortunately this isn't my word, I can't claim credit, I might pronounce it terribly, but we live in a magistrum of existences. There's not one category that we can confine ourselves to. Like, that is just something psychological that we're trying to create to disclose something, or to make ourselves enclosed in something.
Mm-hmm.
And
An identity, trying to
yes,
create an
yeah,
identity. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to know where to begin. I was talking with Richie yesterday. I was talking with him the other day, and I was expressing my sort of analytical attempt at creating a pyramid of intelligence. And it's not intelligence in the sense of, haha, I'm better. But it's sort of like intelligence in the sense where there seem to be real modes of cognition that are higher than one another. And we owe it to ourselves to understand where people are at, and maybe some mechanisms are not obvious to some people while they might be obvious to others. Like I have heard a lot of people discussing stuff like magical thinking, and brilliant individuals who basically believe that the only thing that exists is what appears and what is manifested. So they don't even really say existence. They don't really identify anything. They're just kind of like everything is sort of an apparition that we can communicate with psychically and somehow give breath or depth to, and that's magic. And those people clearly different intelligence
You
than
wait, you froze. You froze. So say that again.
I was saying they're communicating with an intelligence that that most people don't communicate with. And it seems that there is this pyramid of where people are at, and it's sort of like there's awareness, basic, like, oh, I'm a thing, and I have no choice but to like look with my eyes, like that kind of awareness.
Hmm.
And then there's self-awareness,
Hmm.
which is just, oh, I have a mind, and would you look at that, I can go in here and I could go out there and I could go places in the middle. How odd. And then the third form of awareness, which I think is really rare, is like it's a philosophical form of awareness where um you have the ability to see everything conceptually, and then you also have the ability to realize that concepts don't do justice to the things that you're looking at, because you realize that philosophy not only negates everything and creates everything, but it can negate itself and create itself in new ways. um and that to me is like the left hemisphere kind of like next level. And then on the same level would be the right hemisphere's contribution, which is the the idea that you don't even really have to think. All of a sudden you have this clairvoyant, pure flow kind of mystic, under like capital S self, and
Hmm.
you're just kind of engaged with all this stuff, and there's no distinction, there's no division, it's just pure life. Um and that's just the third layer of the pyramid. And I think that we cheat ourselves of the idea that there is something actually greater in our mind
Hmm.
than the game we're playing, like, oh, I'm just this organism, or oh, I'm just Nick.
Yes.
We cheat ourselves of it.
Yeah. And it's my understanding that that is our natural state. And we
Yeah.
have been reduced, or we're born into this very, very confining environment, very limited. And so it's, all of that atrophies, right? It's like,
Yeah.
we we pretty much come in, whole beings, and then we get reoriented, redirected to, okay, no, actually, we all remember stories. I mean, we can tell stories as a child of feeling um, the magic of life, just the magic of the natural world, just the magic of that feeling of being connected with everything. And then if you say something, if we would say something out loud about it, oh my God, do you see oh my God, you're crazy. Just shut up. Don't ever say that again, And so then over time, I mean, maybe that wasn't your life. I know you've
No,
had
no, no, but I'm imagining it.
yeah.
I know those types of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you just get conditioned to be small. And then what I like to share, through the being an experiencer with non-human intelligence, with this intelligence that for one reason or another, it appeared to come into our consciousness and contact us, like
Yes.
from outside in. And we went, holy shit, this doesn't fit the program. And then if I talk about it, then I'm crazy. But it's transformative. It's like it's probably an agreement that, or at least what I used to call a curse is just now it's just been an enormous blessing. I see it as a blessing for coming into my consciousness as other and contacting me and saying, you're more, you're more, you're more, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then having to go through those incredible transformative experiences in order to begin to retune to this higher way of being.
Yes.
and and then I've been trying to describe it for years, to reach the collective consensus mind. And our first video that we did together, we were talking about that. Like, how do I tell people that, there is ecstasy, there is, this connectivity to a universal intelligence and force of love, like pure love. And the consensus conditioned mind will just knee jerk reject that as, well, she's a crazy lady lunatic, um, that is lost in the clouds. And I'm always trying to reframe that for people that, oh no, this is more grounded than anything, to
Right.
feel this force in your body and to be changed by it. And so I believe that some of us went through these kinds of experiences so that we could begin to, at least try and translate it or articulate it, and to share some of the tools and the things that we've learned about consciousness and how to orient to this, masses, to orient to infinity, basically, which touches back into something you just said about, you know so then if you lose um your identity within consensus reality, that's a good thing. It feels terrifying, but it's a good thing. It's a good
Yeah.
start. But the fear, I think, is that, well, then what's that replaced with? Who am I? you know
Yeah.
and when you begin to have these oneness experiences, we would have these experiences and then get kind of dumped back into consensus reality and go, oh my god. And the contrast was just excruciating after witnessing more consciousness, or understanding that we are more. um, and so then what I found is that you still have your preferences, you still have your passion, you still have that individual sense of, I love this, I'm going to
Yes.
do this, I'm going to share this, and life becomes, instead of dying and contracting, you begin to expand and to embrace and to practice being this larger consciousness in the world, thereby breaking the world as we have known it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I that was so beautifully put, because the um the issue is we seldom know the difference between what we think and what we actually uncovered. And you'd be surprised that the further you think, the more you uncover, and the more you uncover, the more the appearances that you have discovered give more thought. And you begin to realize that the world is becoming with you. It's transforming with you. And
Yes.
it's just every little thing that you dwell within, even the really good stuff, even the mystical stuff,
Yeah.
if you begin to, instead of inheriting the properties, you sort of get absorbed by the properties, you realize that you're just playing an identitarian game. You're just identifying with it because you're in it by default. But if you just move in it and then, pick up some gold here and there, ooh, look, a magic crystal, ooh, look, a diamond, you put it in your book bag, and then you expand outward into new manifestations, you'll begin to realize, wow, yeah, there was something great there. But whoa, holy crap. How is it possible for there to be? I literally picked up a diamond from that area, and now there's a completely different manifestation that's telling me that physical reality doesn't exist, and yet there are diamonds in there too. So clearly, my categories are wrong. Clearly,
Yeah.
existence persists regardless of where I choose to dwell in,
Yes.
because existence is existence is an excess of itself. It is always beyond what it is.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. I love that. And it's not anything to be feared. See,
Yeah.
we have this enormous, it's almost like it feels like an ancient fear, like don't go there, because that it will annihilate you. Um and I don't know why I feel like it's an ancient thing. It just does. I can't really explain that. It just seems like we've been lost or looping in this small reality for so long, that we forgot this connection, and we've been taught to fear it. We fear well, people always refer back to the ego, and that it's the ego that is afraid to die, to lose its power, to lose its position.
Yeah.
Well, it never was designed to be the supreme master of our life. It was always, what I've learned through my experiences and the transformations and the reorienting, is that it is in service to our universal consciousness. It's once we reorient and we make that shift and we start to adjust back, the ego is still very necessary in physical reality. It's not that we want it to die, we want it to just take its rightful position again, and not be um, directing our lives anymore. The director has to come from a much larger identity, and then it's in service of that to help navigate physical reality.
I agree. Yeah. That's exactly how it should be, because if the ego becomes primary, then nothing makes any sense if you really think about it. If if you try to start your philosophy with, all right, well, at least I know my ego exists. At least I know I'm Nick. Almost instantaneously, or at least in the same day, you are going to get hit with a sensation or a thought that is so absurd that either you think you have some form of deep mental illness, or it has to be that the parameters of the ego telling you that this thought is a byproduct of your brain, that just has to be an incorrect narrative to tell yourself.
Yeah.
But if you keep telling yourself that, I guarantee you every day of your life, whenever you're depressed or whenever you get overwhelming angst or overwhelmingly happy, you're going to have all these magical experiences or all these deep existential experiences dragging you to the pits of hell, and you're just going to think to yourself, well, okay, I must have to go to the loony bin,
Mm-hmm.
because those things can't be real realities. I'm crazy. I'm just a person inside this meat sack, and everything that I'm experiencing is a hallucination. And that's what the ego literally does. It rationalizes, it
Yes.
reduces, and then it does what we are talking about, does the worst thing of all. It doesn't want to die, and so it takes all the other faculties of our mind with it. It says, oh no, if I die, the rest of you don't exist by default. And that's just not how real existence operates,
And
and we do ourselves
yeah.
a disservice.
And I feel that that's where we come to a suicidal place, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, and I've been there, and I know a lot of people, other people who have, and it's like, you say, I can't do this anymore because this isn't working for me. I'm unable to shut off these other aspects of myself. Other people, other egos, the collective ego will police uh, each of us too. The people around us will say, well, yeah, you're damn crazy. You need to go to the loony bin. You need to go, or you need drugs, and um, to make that go away.
yeah,
And I would venture to say that I'm definitely not a doctor, and I don't speak from that place. But I feel that if we allowed, more of a relationship with these other aspects of ourselves, welcoming them and dialoguing with them, we wouldn't, it would invite that integration and that balance again, rather than suppressing, running away from it, avoiding it, denying it, with a pharmaceutical, you know, um, or to be institutionalized, or whatever the solution is for the collective who have all agreed that this is an illness. And I would say that if people were allowed to explore these regions, shifts could take place. Transformational shifts could take place in the consciousness if it were welcomed, and then you wouldn't have this suicidal feeling like I have to kill my body to be released from this existential crisis, right? And you don't have to kill the body. That's this wall that we get to, that I talk about a lot, where it's like, how do I transcend this wall? This is a paradox. Now, it's
yes,
only a paradox because we've been born into this small reality, and then some of us get to that wall and go, but wait, it really isn't serving me anymore. And so we have these experiences that help us transcend that wall. Well, now we're at a collective place. We're all standing at the wall right now, and we're going, what now?
yeah,
And so I guess that's, I like to bring up that point whenever I can, that you don't trying, killing the physical body, wanting to leave here because you can't solve the problem within the in the confines of where the problem was born, right? um it That's just the beginning of awakening. That's the exciting part, is to get to that wall and say, I don't know anything, and go drop back into that innocence again. I don't know anything, but I'm willing to know. And so then that's bringing that will in, that will that's been so suppressed, individually and collectively, of just giving up and saying, well, I guess this is life,
yeah,
and it's not life. It's a very, very tiny, tiny fragment of who we actually are. And that's why I like to talk to other experiencers, to talk about how they came to this realization. Oh my God, we are so much more. And then being willing to be the crazy one for most of our lives. And but now, since the world is crazy, then it's flipped.
Yep. That's
So,
the great thing about it. As long as there is the flip and everything doesn't just submerge into each other in like some total chaos, then we're still in a place where there's a possibility of balance. Um, because the flip means like, all right, now the tides have turned. You understand that you had particular misunderstandings about how the world and how I operate. So now it's my turn to kind of exemplify what I believe to be true or real. And then maybe that will balance out the storm. But if the flip never occurs, then it's hard to see the balancing act. So as long as there's like, as long as the tides keep going in and out, it's anyone's game. And I think it's very important that in contemporary times that even though things do get chaotic, there's still so many random variables that there's enough possibility of positive things that could occur in relation to the negative.
yes, true. And that's why I feel like conversations like this are so important, because people aren't going to get this from the news, right?
Yeah,
They're going to
exactly.
get it from each other. And the other thing I like to remind people, or just tell people about, is there are so many people, in this case, like us. There are a lot of people like us. You don't hear about them because the news doesn't, broadcast. Okay, we're up to, like statistics on COVID-19 are very, you can find out anything you want now, but statistics on people who are awakening to their wholeness, to a larger reality, you don't know that. But I like to tell people, just trust, because just because you are just a recent, um, you know, coming online to some self-awareness that you have been sitting in this movie theater, and thinking that this was real. There's a lot of people who have gone through these experiences in a variety of ways, who can, essentially, be tour guides now for people to, it's like, okay, don't worry, it's going to be okay. It really
Right.
is going to be okay, because when you have all these humans that are online with their, cosmic nature, this is where this massive infusion of creativity and collaboration can occur. And that's when you're going to see this incredible new, global awakening in consciousness. So some people think that that's pie in the sky stuff. It's not.
Pie in the sky.
There are a lot of people who have gone through hell, coming online with something larger than what we thought we were. And it's not that, these people need, accolades or attention, and they don't need the egoic attention. They just want to be of service now, and they want to let people know, you're going to be okay. Don't panic, because this is so important, what's happening right now. And I'm sorry that there's a lot of people dying, and there's a lot of chaos and a lot of suffering. But another thing you learn in these spaces is there is no death. There's just transformation into another form, another way of being. So, and that's part of the waking up process, is feeling that deep grieving and pain, and the suffering is what causes the consciousness to go inward and to begin to investigate, something different, something more.
And I like that you mentioned that the basically there is no death, because a weird thing that I always find myself stumbling upon, and I definitely know uh it's not a sense of cowardice. That was the first word that came to my mind, but I guess it's more like it's it's a mixture of, I know that the possibility of terror with a capital T, the kind of mind and soul lost in the pits of oblivion forever and ever, that's not something that I can easily dismiss as a possibility.
Mm.
So but I don't, there's the difference between that and the kind of death is transformation thing is that, honestly, this might sound naive. I don't think to you, but it might sound naive to people. When I introspect into the nature of reality, I don't see oblivion. I see the death as transformation. But I just hold the opposite possibility because it just seems to logically make sense. There's nothing in the universe that is pointing against such a possibility. It's just that it seems highly unlikely. So whenever someone talks of, whenever I try to think about death, uh, the things that, and I wonder what you think about this, this is kind of personal, the things that gravitate, that make me gravitate is when these mystics say something like, oh, we're not alive yet,
Mhm.
like, or birth, our birth was our death,
Yeah.
and we have to, we don't have to commit suicide, but we have to go
Die.
back into our pre-existence before this kind of constrained,
Mhm.
finite organism, and into the infinite breath of, whether it be the one or the world, or God, whatever you want to say it,
Mhm.
back when we weren't categorized, back when we, all we were was an infinite branching out from nowhere. um, that really captivates me, the fact that, what we call life is actually either a form of death, or it's a form of such a deep slumber that the word life is not even the proper concept to even give to what we are missing out on the other side when we arrive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what just what it reminded me of. It reminded me of, like, those moments where I hear that, those, it really hits me. It's like, whoa, yeah, like, really the only sort of fear, the ancient fear that we have, and I think I know what you're talking about when you're saying that. It's like the first fear that it makes me think of is the very basic fear of just, oh shit, if something happens to this body, if something happens to this experience, I'm doomed. Like, that's it, it's over, lights out. And then it's just infinite anxiety. And then the other fear, which is a fear, uh I don't know that I could say that I have, but I definitely dwell in it, is the fear that everything is absurd in a negative sense. Like, I resonate with these nihilistic cartoon shows like BoJack Horseman, for example. I was reading an article on the philosophy of it, and it was basically saying, um, um, everything everything can't be okay because nothing was ever okay. And it was kind of talking about absurdism, this idea that, when we come up with stuff like normal or average, or a category like existence or like happiness, what we're doing is we're taking stuff out of this gunk that we give a word to,
Yeah.
and we're trying to solidify it in something coherent. And basically stuff like BoJack Horseman and Rick and Morty and stuff like that, they basically said, yeah, who gave you the authority to do that? And every time you do that, don't you realize that it just doesn't work? And when it does work, it's just luck because you have no certainty.
Mhm.
So that really gravitates towards me too. Whenever uh I think about death, or whenever I think about life, I think about these deep moments of, like, whoa, there's so many levels to explore. And how strange would it be if I just stayed, if I didn't have the luxury to travel to all these parts of my mind? Everyone should have the ability to travel to all these parts of their mind. None of them seem to have any shroud of certainty. All of them sound plausible and very interesting. And that's, and we just gravitate to what we gravitate to, but we could easily change the force of gravity if we wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. There are no safe spaces within the confines of what we are currently existing within, the collective consciousness. We can find temporary places to hang out, but eventually we're gonna we're going to have to experience that death of, and that transformation of all that we thought we knew, all that we were told. And that creates, what were you saying before about that? When we die, we just go into this,
Oh, infinite breath?
no, it was more negative. It was more like,
Oh, oblivion, like, oh,
yeah,
terror. Yeah,
yeah,
terror, yeah.
that's temporary, because
Right.
that's you going back into the tunnel and tunneling back into, the expansion, the restoration of your whole consciousness. So yeah, that's scary, to those who are entering that panic of what now, what's next. Reality is falling away as I've known it. Yeah, you're gonna go into the fetal position probably, and scream and cry and grieve and call out and cry out, and that's when things become real again, so that you can release all of the inconsistencies, all of the misunderstandings of what you thought or what you were told. And then when that metamorphosis happens, then you're reconnecting, and you're going, and then the revelations begin. Oh, got it. I'm back. And whether you have a body at that point or not, it doesn't matter. You're restored again. But what this intelligence has informed me time and time again, that I've opened to because of these experiences, is that this is what we can do now in this shifting of worlds, which is, in the indigenous calendars. This is where we're at. We are shifting. We're leaving one cycle, massive cosmic cycle of life and experience. I hesitate to say time and space, but and we're entering. We have the opportunity to enter into a new, more grand cycle of existence, or we can stay with the contraction and go back in and experience limitation, again and again and again, if we're speaking reincarnationally. Or one can awaken while in form and come online and say, hey, you're looking at each other. Oh, you came online? Awesome. Let's recreate this place. Let's recreate life on Earth. And so that's that's in the potential as well. So it's infinite potential, regardless of how you look at it. This is so temporary. This existence, this way of being, it's so temporary and so unreal. And people will definitely celebrate when they start moving in the direction of expansion of consciousness. Yes. You will get the new markers. You will get the signs that show you that you're on the right path. it starts to happen. It's not just some wild, weird world where you don't understand anything. You're still physical. You're still in a body. But what some of the religions and even New Age material is always telling us we have to leave this place and that in order to regain our connection. That's not true. We have an opportunity now to expand and then embody what we have expanded into. So we're transforming our consciousness, we're transforming our way of being, we're lighting up our physicality, we're coming online with our physicality in the ways that we were designed. This isn't like, it isn't necessarily mutation or huge evolution. It's restoring what we have always been. Is the way that I have absorbed this information and understand it. Then when you come back online, and this is why you don't necessarily want to gravitate in the direction of transhuman and technologies and artificial intelligence when you're in a fragmented state. You
I
want to
love
come
that.
back
Yeah.
online, embody it, then use the technology to
Yes.
enhance your life on Earth, right?
Oh, I love that you. Oh man, damn! Now I don't know which question to ask first. Because while you're talking about the indigenous calendars and switching from one cycle to another, and then how everything comes back together, like we should use this in this when we get access to these intelligences and to the world at large, we should use it to bring back to to bring us back to what we already were. Um, I was gonna ask you. I asked both questions, but I hope it's not distracting. Uh, the first question is that reminds me. I wanted to ask you about. I watched the 2 or 3 videos with the one of your friends. I believe he's a priest. Like he's a tribesman, I believe, and he was talking about like the Mayan science.
Oh,
And I
Eduardo.
really yes, and
Mhm.
I really wanted, it really captivated me, and I wanted to understand more about the Mayan science, because when we're talking about this, it makes me think of like the spiritual science of like everything's submerging or everything's one, or you just need to remember what you never forgot, like things like that.
Mhm.
It because I have a science that I'm interested in, which is basically um the science of religiosity or revelation, where it's kind of like the religious part of the mind creates just infinitely powerful uh, 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 mystical experiences that transcend the art of dream and transcend the art of the imagination. They're just so ineffable, and to me, I've always been interested in that in order to be able to learn more about what I never forgot, I guess. So
Yeah,
those are basically my 2 questions.
yeah. Well, maybe sometime we can do a talk together with Eduardo.
Oh, I would love that. That'd
Yeah.
be interesting.
Yeah, he's far more knowledgeable, about the science of it than I am. I mean, he was my teacher on the sacred Mayan fire path in Guatemala, um, and he studied, for a few years before I met him, and he was traveling to and from Guatemala. So, in his teachers, I got to meet his teachers, and it was such an honor. It was so amazing. Um, yes, the sciences are it's like a framework, of understanding um, human life and on Earth and with the cosmos. The heart of heaven in the heart of earth, and that now is the time where we're emerging from this very dark cycle, and all that's happening is that we're coming back into the light of who we are. And so it's going to make systems that don't that aren't in alignment or harmonic alignment with the light that is coming into our reality now. Those are going to fall. And so it's important. It was important to the Mayan people that they, each day has a glyph and a tone, and they're like archetypal energies, and so you call that out, and you sit with those energies, and you understand them, you work with them, and so you're reminded. It's like every day, it's like, now we're going to remember this, and now we're going to remember this, and it was all to walk us back to this time. December 21st, 2012 was that marker, where the old cycle is coming. And so now we're in this in-between place. It wasn't going to happen like that. So many people thought it was just going to go, bing, we're awake, yay. And it didn't that way, yeah. And so now we're adapting. We adapted to the dark. We contracted into the dark. And now we have to shift and expand into the light and remember these pieces of ourselves, bring it all back together again. Yeah. So
I really,
yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. That makes a lot of sense. And this goes to my second question, because once you mentioned transhumanism, I'm like, oh man, that's my favorite thing, because I'm a big sci-fi geek, and I'm always fascinated with these ideas of um I'm sure universally people hold this standard. There are some really interesting spiritual minded people that write sci-fi that merges the two, and very few of them do it well. But in reality, there was a medieval times where there were knights and there were paladins and there was church and state and all that stuff. The church was the state sometimes, and people wore robes. But at the same time, there's going to be a future where we're just digital, or we are clones, or we no longer exist in this universe but in a different one, or we no longer have to exist as organisms but as silicon based life forms, or orbs, for Christ's sakes. Like, we could be freaking orbs moving around. And to me, when we mention capital S self, or whenever someone mentions something like Lord of the Rings, and once they realize that that's real life, like there were wizards and witches and swords and staffs and all that stuff, how do they reconcile it with the strangeness and the radicalism of these types of futures where we can download our consciousness to a computer? It seems like there are two completely different worlds that couldn't possibly exist in the same framework, in the same existence. It's either computers or a form of magic, or that we're in a simulation or something. That's where people usually come across. They say it's impossible for there to be witches and wizards in the same world that there are nanotechnologies that can replicate us infinitely. But that is the world we live in. So when you say something like capital S self, I'm really curious, just for fun, how would you fit that into something like transhumanism, where everything gets turned on its head, even our human concepts of self and stuff?
What I would say to that is, all of these realities, all of these possibilities exist at the same time. We're focused currently in this, Earth reality in 2020. I also keep coming back to, have you seen the Hopi Prophecy Rock,
I don't think so.
where it shows that we're at this place now, in between worlds, where there's going to be a choice. The path diverges, and you're either going to stay with your natural state and the natural world and the earth experience, or you're going to move into pure technology.
Yes.
So again, it gets back to, we can blend our natural state with technology, but if we aren't in touch with our own inner authority and our own power and as sovereign beings, then we will continue to be used and harvested for our energy, because we are unaware of who we are. So this split, we are in this split right now. We're either going to come back online with who we truly are, our greater identity, and embody soul, or we're going to surrender that, basically that divine spark within, and say, divine spark, I don't get it. I don't, yeah, download whatever, hook me up
Yeah.
with something that'll make me smarter. Well, it's my understanding through the variety of mystics and teachers that I have spoken to, that agree that our consciousness is supreme. It it it's unmatched. We are magnificent creatures. We were designed to be magnificent beings. The technologies can only attempt to mirror that. So it's like they're getting this technology from within a human being, within their whole capacities. See, and
Right.
so they're externalizing our consciousness and saying, here, all you need is this machine to make you better.
Yes.
It's almost like, we with money as a symbol. Money
Mm-hmm.
is just a symbol for our own currency, our own value, our divine value, if you will. And it's been externalized for us so that we go, oh, I'm nothing. Oh, I have to go to work to live and survive. And okay, no, you don't. You don't have to do that. That's the way this place is structured, because we have forgotten who we are. You're getting darker and darker. I can barely see you.
Oh no. I'm not even realizing it 'cause I'm paying attention to you.
It's like, where are you? I'm losing you.
No, the oblivion.
The oblivion.
But yeah, I like what you said about that, because I'm gonna push you further on that, because uh this is always what fascinates me, and maybe it's just I think pretty deep about it, so I don't think um I'm like not onto something, but there are a lot of science fiction concepts that really interest the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that interests me the most is, if you read a sci-fi book where it says, "Oh, the year 2145," and they make fun of people who are like, "Oh yeah, all these people had these mystical experiences and these religions and all that stuff." Yeah, remember when we were that stupid? Yeah, good times. Uh, and 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 that's a fun thought. But once you enter philosophy, you begin to realize, wait a second. It's literally impossible to do that, because the religious experience is something that is it's a real being. It's a real experience.
Yeah.
So even if it's illusory, it's kind of like, all right, explain how existence itself permitted such a revelation then. And then you can't really just say cuz computers. Because
Yeah.
it gets really strange. Um I really think that things actually get more complicated when transhumanism comes into the picture,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to transhumanism eliminating stuff like God and stuff. Because it's kind of like, all right, like when you mentioned sovereignty and when you mentioned consciousness being primary, like supreme, what happens if we develop a AI infinitely more intelligent than us? And then because we know with absolute certainty that we can't, with brute force or with any kind of mental method, be able to reach what exactly they're trying to give us access to. So then we just tell the AI, all right, take my consciousness and bring it up to your level. And if it does that, I really feel like everything that we're experiencing right now, even everything that can be potentially experienced, the entirety of existence itself, because of a computer, can turn on a dime. And uh, every single mode, even though it's infinite and absolute, immediately becomes far more infinite and absolute because of an object that infinitely distances itself from us. So, for example, like God, for example, if God exists, no matter how far we go, we have still not even made one step in His direction or its direction, because it's just absolute, right? So,
Mm.
what if we have a computer that's just like that relative to us? And then we upload our minds to that computer. uh, I'm so curious whether consciousness and sovereignty and God and everything that we think about and experience, it doesn't just go out the window, but it is just a mere particle in a sea of infinite iterations of what the computer can manifest as a mind. That scares the shit out of me and fascinates me, because I really think that computers are this strange object that is not just created by man, so it can't exceed man, but I think that man man has such a divine spark that he can create something that can transcend himself. And I think that's what's so fascinating. So I was just wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah. Eh, there are many ways that we can diverge from from the truth of who we are, let's say, or diverge from love with a capital L. We
Yeah.
can experiment and play with that and say, I'm gonna go down this path now, where I surrender the very last of my will and my sovereignty by saying, this is what I see as the highest representation of intelligence.
Yes.
And uh, that's the part where, if you had your knowing of your own sovereignty and your embodiment, you would not choose that path. Why would you? You would be choosing something very different. You would say, I'm fully here, and I want to employ this technology that interacts with my natural state as an extension of me.
Right.
And
Cybernetics.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we
Yes.
begin to work in that way together. The other pathway is to say, I'm just a stupid piece of shit. So will you, make me smarter, make me better, and you surrender that spark. But I you know, I believe that all paths always come back. Eventually, through an evolutionary process, it will come back to that oneness again, where you go, oh, again, like, oh, that was interesting, but I'm back.
I
And
like
so
that.
it's
Yeah.
it's preferences. It's all preferences, but you can choose things consciously and you can choose things unconsciously, and that's where we are right now. Is we want to come to a place of choosing our next steps consciously. So that means actively working on coming online in this way with our greater self with a capital S. And you know, it's been dealt with in a way where we just make fun of it, or we laugh at it, or we think that's silly or that's crazy. You're going to want to really stop and reconsider what you're calling crazy at this point.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I'm putting out there now, as someone who has been thought of as crazy for most of my life. I feel that I have come to this place of resonance with this greater self, and we're all connected to that. That's where our oneness is. It's not fantasy land. It's actually coming home to the truth of who we are. Or we can continue to deny that and go down these other pathways that we think, think,
Yes.
with just the egoic level, that well, this makes pure logical sense that we would go in this direction and we would become more intelligent. Well, you're not using your whole capacities to make that decision. You're
Exactly, and you could never know the full capacity that you can never know if you're using your full capacity to make any decision, because um, your the energy to compose or manifest a free decision is infinite. So again, it's a matter of, all right, how much um, juice am I willing to put into this specific action? And you can change that at any given time. So to think that whatever decision you make is a means to an end is the wrong way of looking at it, because you're just you're just telling yourself a story like, oh, I want to get breakfast. Okay, now we're already talking about breakfast. We're already limiting ourselves to a category. All
mm-hmm.
right, now what do I want for breakfast?
Right.
And because you're limiting yourself, you think, oh, okay, well, there's only so many options and so much energy I could put into this one decision. But not only is that not true, but also the concept of breakfast and the concept of food are already reductions to something in
Mm-hmm.
order to better tell a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, again,
Yes.
it's a preference
Yes.
for what what you're catering to and what you're not catering to.
Right. Right. And if you get enough people to agree that that
Yep.
is reality and this is all that's real, then you'll co-create that with other people,
Yeah.
in that limited way.
And it's I think the problem is when something isn't physical, people relate it to just like a group delusion. So like
Yes.
if all of you agree that this one archetype, this one Jungian archetype exists, and then you all get together, and then no one can see it, hear it, touch it, feel it, then just people look at you and are like, oh, all right, morons. And but if it's something physical, if all of a sudden you wrote a book on the Jungian archetype, and you created all these statistical analyses, but you still can't see it, you still can't touch
Right.
it, you still can't feel it, then people are like, oh, maybe they're onto something. So
Well, because
yeah,
that person has PhD after their name, and so they are an authority. So we give
yeah,
power to these authorities to tell us, what's intelligent, and what should we be considering. And of course, we would be considering these discoveries. There's a lot of amazing literature and material out there that's very inspiring. And again, if we keep looping within this smaller confine of consciousness, it's impressive within the confines. But what happens when you come back online with your cosmic nature? Then it's like you reorient to that, and you're looking back at the Jungian material and going, oh yeah, how quaint, that's how we viewed it, now that we are it. And now we're looking
yes,
back at the symbols and look how we used to see it, with these categories. And yeah, so it's all a matter of perspective, right?
yep, Exactly.
Oh my
It's
God.
it's really interesting.
This
Yeah.
is so cool. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm going to have to sign off now. But
No.
yeah, this is so amazing. I love talking with you, Nick. So tell me we can do it again.
We definitely can. I'll be
Okay.
free 24/7. So
Yeah, awesome. Um, so yeah, this has been just the most amazing day. Just talking, talking, talking. I love it. I love the dialogue. I love what comes from, connecting in, a place of a willingness to just investigate, and to discover these things in others, and go and find where we resonate, and then
yep.
also where we can each give each other these different viewpoints and different perspectives, and it just starts to fill in all the blanks, right? And this is the oneness. This is us coming together going, oh, I'm integrating this piece and this piece and this piece. And the same goes for these contact experiences, and thinking initially that it's some other being from another planet, or that's what we find when we Google it, mostly like, oh, I had this experience, let me Google it. Oh, it was a being from another planet. Oh my God. And then we get corralled back um, into the existing definitions, right?
Right.
Instead of uh, being willing to just go neutral and go, I don't know. What can this essence, this energy inform me of something greater than what I think uh, is available to me? Within what I, circling within what I have been circling within. So these are aspects of ourself as well. You are an aspect of me. This contact I've come to know were aspects of me merging back into my consciousness, waking me up into this whole state of being, which is not, I mean, everybody thinks, oh, that's enlightenment. I like to say enlightenment is kindergarten. It's like
Yes.
once go, whoa, I had an experience, and I understand now. And we don't get to go to the cave and hang out and hide from, humanity. People are coming online in this way and saying, whoa, how can I be of service to recreate this? Because we're done. Whether it's this virus or something else coming down the pike, when the light comes in, it's going to cause this awakening, and it's going to bring people online, and they're going to go, I don't prefer this. What?
Yep.
You're my
Huh?
representative?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, you do not represent me. So we just basically, when we become, the authority of our own being, why would we elect someone who doesn't have this awareness or consciousness? They don't represent, this whole way of being. So everything's transforming, and it's not something to be afraid of. Things are going to get scary, probably, but I just keep trusting that it's moving in the direction of expansion. If it were moving in the direction of contraction, which is there, the evidence is there. Be careful. I just say to people, be careful of not glomming onto that contraction story. Go with the expansion, even though it's not defined. Just keep moving in the direction of expansion and inquiry into your own self and your own consciousness, and you will receive more information, more validation, more synchronicities, more glimpses into your eternal nature, which is, again, these quick little mystical experiences, these glimpses. I was always informed those are meant, those are your natural state that you're getting glimpses of. And we think it's like mad supernatural, and weird and all of that. No, that's who you
I'm
really
on the
are.
phone.
That's who you really are. So
Yeah.
that's what we're flipping now.
Wait, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
1 second.
I got to get my piano hooked up. What are you laughing at?
I am trying to solve a dispute about
Okay.
the two children with my phone. Hold on. Thank you. Problem solved. No one gets the phone. Hey, consult with your father. Oh boy.
Now
Yeah, I had
there's
that.
Nick solving the bigger problems of the universe, right?
Yep. Gotta get rid of those magic boxes with the images in them.
Yes.
Can't just
There's
it's
such a draw.
driving people nuts.
Well, I'm gonna let you go now, Nick. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Because this is always it's always a great time talking to you. So I hope we get to talk again soon. I will find
Of
you.
course.